live with Curated Insights. I'm Seth Deckman. I'm your host. I'm the president and owner of the Keynote Curators. And in this live session, we're going to be talking about working with committees as you book your speakers. I'm sure that resonates with so many meeting professionals, event planners, conference planners out there. We all have committees that we want to work with, that we need to work with, that we're obligated to work with. And they have a lot of complex and complicated dynamics to them. I've often heard the phrase that when you work with committees, it's like herding cats. And if you know anything about cats, even the bare minimum, it is very, very difficult to herd cats, pull them all together, get them on the same page and moving in the right direction. So you have your event, you have your location, you have your date, you have a theme, you have your topic, you know who the attendees are, you know historically who you've had in the past, you know what your budget is, and you begin the process of your speaker search. So you reach out to the Keynote Curators, and we begin to have a conversation to start to narrow and define who would be included in the curated list that you're going to review. Now, this process that I just explained, it's not rocket science. It's a process I do with all Fortune 500 companies, large and small, that entrust me with partnering and collaborating on curating their speakers for their conferences, for their meetings, for their events, their workshop sessions, whatever they need a speaker for. They've entrusted me, and this is the process that works. Often a committee is involved. It's a group of people that represent either the attendees or internally, either executives or heads of certain business units that are involved with the execution and the design of the specific event. Once a list is curated and it's distributed to the committee, there is often, and ideally, there should be a lead person who distributes the curated list of speakers, who will provide any type of notes, and then start the conversation around narrowing it down and maybe either voting on or coming to an agreement on what single or multiple speakers are going to be selected. So a couple of recommendations here. You need to have a timeline. If it's not in existence and not on the calendar, then it's just going to keep passing deadlines, and getting closer to the event. You're going to run into problems with event. You're going to run into a lot of problems with being available for the event itself and other types of questions. So here's what I would say. I would say put a deadline out into the future of by when the decision needs to be made. So if the event is in May, you will probably want to book 3 or 4 months minimum prior to, if not more. So the decision needs to be made by, let's say, February 1st. So if your committee can only meet 1 or 2 or 3 times prior to that, they need to get the list by November or December in this example, in this case. Every group, every organization, every company has a different timeline. But with committees, more often than not, the process takes longer. So what I recommend is get the list out about 6-7 months to your committee and let them review. If you know that certain speakers on the list are not going to work or off the bat don't fit perfectly for what you're looking for, I would remove them from consideration immediately. You also need to have a system on how you're going to rate the speakers. It could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scoring system. It could be a star. It could just be a vote up or down, a yay or a nay, but some type of system. So you need a deadline by which to choose. You need a deadline by which the speakers need to get out there. their list needs to get out there to the committee. And then you need to have a voting system in place. Now, what can happen along the way is that members of the committee might find through their own network and their own resources other speakers. And that's great because now you're collaborating and you're bringing in to the project and to the choice process more options. The downside of that is that it can detour and distract the focus. So there has to be a process by which speakers that are new or additions to the process get added in. It has to go through the one who's directing the process, whether it's a leader on the committee, the liaison from the company or the organization who's dealing with the keynote curator and being the source of checking the current feed, checking availability, and any particulars as to why not only is that speaker a great fit for the organization, but why we also need to include them and make the case for them. So with that said, once you've gotten all your choices in and you've narrowed it down, you always want to have your first, second, and third choice. During the course of the selection process, there's often changes in availability. There might even be changes in fee, although more often than not, fees are honored even if they change, change in the course of being presented from one month to the other. But you need to be aware of that the longer it takes, it's a possibility. So now you've narrowed it down to 1, 2, or 3, and then you've got to go and put the offer in and secure the speaker and then move forward. Working with committees. If anybody out there wants to ask a question while we're here live, go ahead, feel free to chime in and ask a question. This will be available for viewing. Again, it's just a little tidbit on how to work with committees. You need to have your deadline. You need to have your voting process. You need to have your recommendations distributed from a single source so that there's no confusion and it's streamlined and it's consistent so that people aren't chiming in from all over the place. Now, the personalities on a committee are something that I want to talk about. You might have some people that have been on the committee for a long time, have really strong opinions, and people that are recently in and don't know how to get their voice heard within the committee. That's where the voting systems comes into play. And that's where a meeting or a Zoom or a conference call where you can bring people in and talk about it and make sure that everybody gets a chance to have their voice heard. The most important thing is you need to keep the attendees in mind, and you need to keep what the theme, the topic, the messaging, the current mood of the industry, the organization, what initiatives there are in mind, and how that speaker is going to provide something that's going to move business forward for that organization, whether it's culture, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's teamwork, whether it's the hybrid workforce. How are they going to forward the conversation and impact the bottom line? And it might not be obvious up front with a lot of speakers, but that's really what the anchor of the mindset of the committee needs to be. So I leave you with those thoughts. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, all sorts of trade associations all over the world for the last 20 years. Feel free to chime in offline, direct message me, reach out. You know our website. You know how to get a hold of me. I'd love to continue this conversation and find a way to not only help you work with committees, but to curate the perfect keynote speaker for you that has the most impact and the broadest reach and the most profound, long-lasting influence that it can have on your organization. So thank you for joining us for this live session with Curated Insights by me, Seth Deckman. And until then, we'll see you next time.